I think Identity 5 needs to change, or it's going to lose a big part of its place.
Wait, this is my video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is my...
Okay.
Go. That was my wife, Kira. I think that Identity 5 needs to change, or is going to lose a lot of its player base. If Netease wants to gain a new player base, and also wants to retain players that are playing it and picking it up for the first time, even to retain some of the players that have been playing it for a very long time, I think that Netease needs to make some adjustments. Let's discuss. Before I discuss my points in depth, I want to make sure that you understand that I am coming from an NA EU server perspective, but I have also tried to keep into account the other servers, for example the Chinese server and also the Asia server, in the conclusions that I have come to and the suggestions that I have for the game. The first change that I think that Netease, the company that owns Identity 5, should implement to the game is they should add more tournaments to the NA EU server. By this I mean officially licensed by the company. Every week or every month or every couple of months, Identity 5 in the Chinese server has multiple competitions to win things like earpods or different types of products, as well as other types of tournaments that are to do with the player base that they have there, different teams going against different teams to win prizes and money prizes. Meanwhile, in the NAEU server, we don't have any type of competitions. Sometimes we get art competitions once a year and the tournaments that are obviously the KOA Global Finals. But due to the lack of tournaments, it feels like the player base has nothing to kind of strive towards, and people who want to pick up the game for the first time will be more interested in the game if they know that there's a esports to it that they can maybe compete in, or maybe can have as their goal when they improve at the game overall. This would give the game more competitive recognition, meaning that more players would hear through word of mouth that there is a competitive aspect of the game that would, in general, make more people pick up the game for the first time. Of course, I do understand that this is very difficult for Netease to implement because the NAEU server does spread over multiple continents, and thus there are more laws and countries that they have to abide by. But I do think that it's something that wouldn't be super difficult for them to do, especially if they started on a small scale, since our server is much smaller in the number of players than, for example, in the Chinese server. They need to improve the queue times, especially in rank. Now, there are multiple solutions to this, and Netease is currently investigating this and trying to find a solution for how they can maybe shorten queue times. Their current goal is to maybe mess around with the ranking tier system, but I have another solution that might be able to make this happen more naturally. One of the reasons why the queue time is so long is there are less hunters playing the game in our server, and this is due to many reasons that I will discuss later on in the video. But another solution that I have come to maybe get more players into higher tiers, and also maybe get more players into each tier within the rank system tier list, is to open rank time for a little bit longer for lower tiers. By this I mean opening it for an extra hour or an extra 2 hours if you are between Worker Bee and maybe something like Mammoth 1 or possibly Griffin 1. This would mean the rank would be open for maybe 3 to 4 hours in total for players who are lower tier, meaning that they have more chance to rank up and improve at the game, saturating each tier with more players and also giving chance for survivors to go up into higher tiers and make it so there are more players in each tier. This would also help players that are higher tier because they would have more matches per rank session, meaning that they can improve and get higher tiers faster instead of having to wait in a queue time for the next 5, 10, 20 minutes. As I've said before, I'm not very happy with the current position that hunters are in Identity 5, and this is due to a multitude of factors. First, the cipher machines are finished too quickly, and it usually feels like when you get your first survivor down on a chair or even just knocked down, 2 cipher machines have popped, possibly even 3 have popped, leaving you with 3 to maybe 2 ciphers left before the match is already ended because the survivors can just open the gates. In some situations, survivors make mistakes, but I don't think that a hunter should depend upon survivors making big mistakes just to be able to tie or win a match. Now more than ever, especially after the recent adjustments for all the characters, does it feel like this is now a tie meta where most of the time a hunter is fighting just to be able to get a tie. Second, I think that survivors' kiting abilities are getting stronger, and I feel like more survivors have more kiting abilities. This makes it even more difficult and takes even longer for a hunter to be able to knock down the first survivor, making it once again more difficult for a hunter to win. Third, I think that playing hunter overall is less rewarding than playing as a survivor, at least for the general player base. There are people who are hunter mains, for example like me, who really do enjoy the aspects of hunting, but for others there's no real reason to play hunter because it's very stressful and you don't really get anything else from it except from the joy of maybe winning a match that doesn't seem to be happening as much anymore. To fix the first problem of Cypher machines going by too quickly, I think that Netease needs to implement some type of kicking Cypher mechanic, similar to Dead by Daylight. My suggestion is that a hunter should be able to approach a Cypher machine, maybe touch it or kick it, literally, and after the Cypher machine has received this kick, it will slowly decrease its percentage of decoding. By this I'm thinking maybe 1% per second. But I don't think it should go all the way down to 0, I think it should go down to 50% maximum. For example, if the Cypher machine was at 60%, it would take 10 seconds for it to go down to 50% and then it wouldn't decrease anymore. The ability also would not be able to be activated on Cypher machines that are below 50%. This would give hunters a chance to be able to slow down the decoding a little bit, but they would need to be proactive and go towards a Cypher machine and touch it themselves instead of chasing a survivor. This ability should also have some type of cooldown, and the interaction it should have with Abnormal maybe should make Abnormal less effective if that Cypher machine has been kicked within a certain period of time. By leaving the 50% marker, I feel like this would still make the matches fast-paced, as I think that that's what Netease wants the game to be, so there are more people playing matches, thus making the queue times much shorter. But at the same time, it would give the hunters a little bit more control over the time and the pacing of the match that I think is necessary, at least in our server. I have no solution to the second problem of survivors being a little bit too powerful with their kiting abilities, but later on I do have a suggestion overall that could lead to a solution to this very problem. I'll talk about that later. To solve the third problem that I mentioned about hunters not getting as much of a reward for playing hunter and it being more stressful, I feel like there should be some type of reward system that they can get. Or maybe there should be some type of reward that you receive by playing hunter. By this I mean maybe you receive 10 clues or 10 fragments for playing a hunter match, getting up to 30 maximum every day. This would give some type of reward, especially for newer players to be able to play hunter more often and maybe to build up those clues to be able to buy the character that they want. Or for higher tiers, it would just be a little bit of a benefit to play hunter occasionally. This is just a suggestion, maybe there could be some other type of reward that hunters could get, but I think there does need to be a small incentive for players to be able to play hunter. Or motivate them to at least. Accelerated decoding is something that I've heard a lot of players complain about, especially hunter mains, but not only hunter mains. I do think the idea does sound good on paper, I think that it's implemented incorrectly. I think there needs to be a different condition that is met for it to actually start activating. My idea for this would be that it would activate only if one survivor is eliminated. Possibly the decoding speed would increase depending on the amount of survivors that are eliminated. For example, if one survivor is eliminated, accelerated decoding activates and all survivors get 10% faster decoding. If 2 survivors are eliminated, 20% accelerated decoding. If 3 are eliminated, then 30% accelerated decoding. This would give a chance for survivor teams that maybe had a player who had some types of problems at the beginning and got down super early within the first 10 seconds of the game to be able to catch up a little bit and to not completely lose just because their teammate may have had a connection issue, or maybe just had a bad day and got terror shocked. But this would also give hunters more time if they had a bad early game because maybe they chased a wildling for too long, or maybe they found a mercenary and then the next character they found was a wildling. This would give them more time because accelerated decoding wouldn't activate until they actually eliminated a survivor. I feel like this would be fair on both sides and it would make it so that the game is more interactive and more fair, giving that last survivor a chance to maybe have multiple options of escape if they are the last person standing. My overall solution for balancing the game overall would be for Netease to implement some type of Identity 5 committee. By this, I mean that Identity 5 would select some maybe big figures within the communities, maybe really professional players, or maybe some type of content creators, to be part of a committee that could talk with the community overall and every 2 to 3 months could make a meeting with some representatives of Identity 5 and Netease to be able to discuss what the community wants changed about the game or what we think that they could improve upon. This would give these players more of a voice and make them feel like they do have some sway over how the game is changing, but also would give Netease the option to be able to see what the player base wants and maybe implement something that they would like to be able to satisfy them, but also for them to be able to respond to certain changes as well and inform the player base and make them more happy. Of course, Netease would not need to implement any of the changes suggested, but it could just give them a couple of options to think about to make it so the game feels more balanced overall, because they might not know what they need to change. I also think that there could be multiple committees per server that could all come together, and Netease can pick and choose whatever they think is more important from each server's suggestions. Now for me to discuss my opinions and suggestions for how Netease can attract new players and also retain players for longer. The first thing I suggest for Netease to change is that they should change how the crossovers work. I think that the option of having a specific skin for a hunter or a survivor isn't as impactful as it could be and doesn't really mean much for new players or for players who've been playing the game for a long time. These things seem very inconsequential and go past very quickly. What I do think that they should do is they should introduce specific new characters to the game that are from those characters. Imagine that instead of giving Evil Reptilian the Ryuk skin from the recent Death Note crossover, instead they actually made Ryuk into his own type of hunter, maybe being able to go invisible or some other type of ability like that. Or for the Promised Neverland, that instead of giving Bloody Queen the Isabella skin, that they have made Isabella into a hunter. For example, her abilities could be to be able to locate survivors on the map and then mark a survivor, and then for a short period of time her movement speed is increased exponentially, but then after that she gets tired and her movement speed is decreased dramatically. This would make it so that players would be able to buy these hunters and survivors from the shop like normal hunters forever, and would make it so that players would want to join because they know, oh well, my favorite character's in this game, I'm going to play as them. It would feel much more exciting to be able to play as that character and using their abilities in the game. That means that there are no specific things for people who were there for the event, but I think that they could make more realistic skins, or maybe some special skins from different parts of the anime or the movie or the game that they are coming from, and make those into specific skins that are available for a limited period of time from that season's essence. Talking about essences, I think that Identity V needs to change how many times you have to open up essences before you get a guaranteed A tier and S tier. I think they need to lower it. I feel like it is way too difficult and people feel very scared to spend any type of money on the game because they know that they can't get the guaranteed unless they open hundreds upon hundreds of essences. I think by lowering this would incentivize more players to spend more money, and also would make it so that the skins feel a little bit more accessible for people who might not be able to spend that amount of money. I also think that they might need to increase the odds of you getting an S tier randomly or an A tier randomly, but it might not be necessary if they implement this first idea that I mentioned. I think that Netease also needs to adjust the appearance of the game. Now, if you play on Arms Factory or you play on Leo's Memory, and then you compare it to the recent maps such as Chinatown or maybe even Ever Sleeping Town, there is a huge difference in quality between the textures and the colors of the map. I think that they need to go back and they need to readjust some of the older maps to make them more modern and make them stand out a little bit more from each other. I remember that when I first started to play the game, I confused a lot of the maps and mixed them up and thought I was on the same map when I was on a completely different map, especially with Arms Factory and Leo's Memory. By adding more texture to the walls or adding more texture to some of the elements in the game without actually changing the maps themselves would make it so that this game feels more appealing towards newer players who come to the game and just see a grey mess that is desaturated. Connected to that idea, I do think the game does need a little bit of a saturation boost as well, just to make the skins maybe stand out a little bit more. Again, to make the game feel less like it's monotone. This whole video was a lot of personal opinions, and I'm pretty sure that you will disagree with some of the suggestions that I've made. So please tell me down in the comments below if you have any other suggestions or any corrections to some of the suggestions that I have said. Also, please like this video if you found this video interesting, and subscribe if you'd like to learn some tips, some tricks, and maybe some secret information about Identity V that you didn't know. Take care, guys. Bye bye.